Quentin Tarantino has hailed two films as the greatest Hangout movies of all time, and they are wildly different. Tarantino is a lover of cinema that anyone who watches his movies can tell. From his celebration of Hollywood of years gone by in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to actually using cinema to end World War II in Inglourious Basterds, Tarantino loves to share that passion with the world. Outside of movies, he is also very vocal about discussing the movies he loves, including calling Jaws the best movie ever made and hailing the Toy Story franchise. Tarantino also likes to highlight different genres of movies. He has expressed his admiration for exploitation films of the past and also praises many classic kung fu revenge movies. When highlighting the best Hangout movies ever made, he put two side by side at the top of the list. While both films are great and both do serve the requirements of the genre, putting them together really shows how varied the Hangout movie genre can be. Quentin Tarantino called Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo the best Hangout movies of all time. The teen movie classic and the John Wayne Western have something in common. When naming his favorite movies since he began his career as a filmmaker, via Sky News, Quentin Tarantino named Dazed and Confused as the best Hangout flick of all time, alongside Rio Bravo. While both movies are hailed as classics by fans and critics alike, there are few people who would have ever put them in a genre together, much less name them as the two best movies of that genre. Directed by Richard Linklater, Dazed and Confused is a hugely influential high school movie with a cast of future stars like Matthew McConaughey, Milla Jovovich, and Ben Affleck. Set on the final day of school in 1976, the film follows various students, from stoners to athletes to social outcasts, as they look for parties and ways to kick off the summer on a high note. The movie glides along in an easygoing tone. It captures the party atmosphere and sense of endless fun possibilities that come from the final day of school. In comparison, Rio Bravo would seemingly be a much more tense story. The classic Western movie by Howard Hawks stars John Wayne as a sheriff and Dean Martin as his deputy. After arresting a thug for murder, the duo find themselves in danger as the murderer's brother sends hired guns to attempt to free him. The Western relies on the growing tension of these men finding themselves outnumbered. However, even with people being gunned down and Martin's character, Dude, battling alcoholism, the tone is also kept fairly light. From the premises to the main genre to the characters, Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo are very different movies. However, watching them together, a similar vibe does reveal itself. While the Hangout movie is not a genre that is talked about much, or even easy to define, taking a look at Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo does help to understand just what these types of movies offer. What makes a great Hangout movie? Rio Bravo and Dazed and Confused focus on characters over plot. Part of the reason Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo can both be considered the best Hangout movies despite being so different is that the Hangout movie defies genres. In fact, most of these films have very loose plots, with the focus being on the characters. The vibe of the project and the interactions of the characters within the story are meant to give the vibe that you, the audience, are simply hanging out with these people and getting to know them. Dazed and Confused certainly fits this description as the audience drives around in cars, socializing outside the local hangout, and parties with these characters. There are loose plots associated with certain characters, like a football star debating committing to the team next year and freshmen trying to escape hazing. However, these are really just opportunities to explore the characters more. One of the reasons Dazed and Confused is such a rewatchable film is that the characters are made so rich that it feels like reuniting with old friends. Rio Bravo might seem to have a much more noticeable plot, reflecting a Western story like High Noon. However, once the premise is introduced, very little time is spent advancing that in any way. The idea of hired guns coming to break the prisoner out of jail really only exists to force the characters together in close quarters where their relationships shine through. It is not an action-packed Western, but a story of heroism that allows the audience to get to know the true side of these heroes. In the end, what happens to the prisoner is not really even noteworthy. The movie treats it almost as an afterthought. The real focus in Rio Bravo is on where the main characters have gotten to by the end. Dude, Dean Martin, confronts the self-doubt that has been fueling his alcoholism. Colorado, Ricky Nelson, has proven he will get involved in the right cause, and Chance, John Wayne, allowed himself to be vulnerable enough to fall in love. These are not big plot points but developments the characters naturally take as we spend time with them. Tarantino made his own classic Hangout movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood fits the genre perfectly. Quentin Tarantino's love of genre movies has certainly influenced his career. His love of heist movies like The Killing led to him making Reservoir Dogs, while his love for team on a mission movies like Where Eagles Dare led to him making Inglourious Basterds. With Tarantino sharing his love for Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo as great hangout movies, it is not too surprising that he eventually added his own entry to the genre with his Oscar-winning Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Once again, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood tells a very loose story, especially considering Tarantino's other iconic movies. Set in 1969, we follow fading TV star Rick Dalton, Leonardo DiCaprio, and his loyal stuntman, Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt, as well as their much more famous neighbor, Sharon Tate, Margot Robbie. The movie unfolds over a few different days as these characters go about their routines, including shooting a TV pilot and crossing paths with the Manson family. It is interesting how Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a significantly different hangout movie than both Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo, yet it also incorporates elements seen in both movies. With Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Dazed and Confused being set only several years apart, they use their period setting to add to the hangout vibe as the audience gets to drive around, listen to music, and get a feel for this earlier era. Of course, old westerns also play a big role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but the central friendship between Rick and Cliff mirrors Rio Bravo, focusing on Chance and Dude. While it may be too early to say whether Quentin Tarantino made a hangout movie as good as Dazed and Confused and Rio Bravo, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has already become very rewatchable. It remains to be seen if his upcoming pseudo-sequel about Cliff Booth will capture a similar hangout vibe.